औज़ुबिल्लाहिमिनश्शैतानिर्रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम रब्बि इश्रह ली सदरी व यस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली रब्बि ज़िदनी इल्मा वल्हिक़नी बिस्सालिहीन अल्लाहुम्मा इन्नी अस्अलुका इल्मन नाफ़िअन रिज़्क़न तय्यिबन व अमलन मुतक़ब्बलन। Assalamu alaikum students, how are you all? May Allah be with you. Today you are going to learn about the second part of the biochemistry chapter, which is chapter number 21, the functions of carbohydrates. And after that you will learn about the proteins. What are proteins, what are their introduction, and what is their composition, and how they are going to be classified. So we are going to start it. The functions of the carbohydrates. As you know, the carbohydrates are called the fuel of life. It produces energy which is used by living organisms. 1 gram of sugar produces 4 kilocalories energy. Now the glucose on the right side, if you see, these are the highly fructose containing fruits. Then the sucrose are there. Then the composition of the sucrose is there. So what are the glucose? Glucose comes from the Greek word which means sweet. It's a type of sugar you get from the foods you eat, and your body uses it for energy. As it travels through your bloodstream to your cells, it's called blood glucose or blood sugar. Insulin is a hormone that moves glucose from your blood into the cells for energy and storage. Then the next example is about the fructose or fruit sugar. Is a simple ketonic monosaccharides. You know about the ketones. Then the monosaccharides, एक ही sugar वाला, found in many plants where it is often bonded to glucose to form the disaccharide sucrose. It is one of the 3 dietary monosaccharides along with the glucose and galactose that are absorbed directly into blood during the digestion. In other words, जब ग्लूकोज और गैलेक्टोज आपस में कंबाइन करते हैं तो फ्रुक्टोज बनाते हैं, और फ्रुक्टोज आपको फ्रूट्स में मिलते हैं. सुक्रोज इज अ कॉमन शुगर. It is a disaccharide molecule composed of 2 monosaccharides, glucose and fructose. Sucrose is produced naturally in plants from which table sugar is refined. It has the molecular formula C12, H22, O11. You know them better. This is the table sugar, sucrose. So here is the formula of the sucrose on your right side, and the structure, the cyclic structure of the sucrose. Then the next example is of the starches. The starch is a soft, white, tasteless powder that is insoluble in water, cold water, alcohol, or other solvents. The basic chemical formula of the starch molecule is C6H10O5 It is the polysaccharide. Starch is the polysaccharide comparison with the glucose monomers joined in an alpha 1 fold linkages. The main function of the starch is as way to store energy for plants. Starch is the source of sugar in an animal's diet. Animals break down starch using amylase. एनिमल्स के स्टमक के अंदर एमाइलेज होता है जो उसको ब्रेक डाउन कर लेता है. एन एंजाइम फाउंड इन saliva and the pancreas that breaks down starch to get energy. Starch can be used to make glue, paste, and new types of the biobatteries. Then the cellulose. Cellulose is a molecule consisting of the hundreds and sometimes even thousands of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms. Cellulose is the main substance in the walls of the plant cells, helping plants to remain stiff and upright. Humans cannot digest cellulose, but it is important in the diet as fiber, mainly used in the paper industries. On the right side, here is the cell walls, and there are the cellulose inside it, the fibers. These are the cells, and the plants contains the cellulose. And this was the example was the starches. Then the next example is of the oligosaccharides. They are involved in the function of the secreted proteins like the antibodies and the blood clotting factors. The receptors, examples of the oligosaccharides are the receptors. द रिसेप्टर्स ऑन द सेल मेम्ब्रेन के जो रिसेप्टर्स हैं वो उनके बारे में बात हो रही है. आर कॉम्प्लेक्सेस ऑफ द कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स विद सर्टेन प्रोटीन्स. दीज रिसेप्टर्स रिकॉग्नाइज द मॉलिक्यूल्स ऑन द सरफेस ऑफ सेल मेम्ब्रेन. Here this is the skin. If you observe over here, this is the glycoproteins, the extracellular fluids are present, and the carbohydrates are here. So these carbohydrates make the receptors on the cell membranes. These are the complex carbohydrates. So these receptors recognize the molecules on the surface of the cell membrane. Then the derivatives of the carbohydrates, the protein glycol and the protein glycol heparin sulfate are involved in the attachment of the neurons to one another during the development of the nervous system. डेरिवेटिव्स ऑफ द कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स की एग्जांपल जो है वो प्रोटीन ग्लाइकोल हेपरिन सल्फेट है और वो जो है वो अटैचमेंट करता है न्यूरॉन्स को एक दूसरे के साथ जोड़ता है. सो नर्वस सिस्टम की डेवलपमेंट में ये काम करते हैं डेरिवेटिव्स ऑफ कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स. डिजीजेज ड्यू टू कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स जो है वो डायबिटीज है, मेलिटस है, लैक्टोज इंटॉलरेंस आ जाती है, फ्रुक्टोज इंटॉलरेंस आ जाती है, गैलेक्टोसीमिया आ जाते हैं एंड ग्लाइकोजन स्टोरेज डिजीजेज जो है इसके अंदर प्रेजेंट होती हैं. सो दैट वाज द topic about the carbohydrates was finished, and now we are going to learn about the new topic, the proteins. In the intro you are going to learn about the proteins are the macromolecules formed by the amino acids. Proteins are large size molecules, macromolecules, polymers of the structure unit called the amino acids. A total of 20 different amino acids exist in proteins, and hundreds to thousands of these amino acids are attached to each other in long chains to form a protein. Basic सिर्फ 20 amino acids हैं. The E. coli bacteria contains 3,000 different proteins. Similarly, human contains the 100,000 different kinds of the proteins. These are the right and left. In the diagonal form, you will observe the examples as the picture in the pictures of the proteins. Different types of the dietary proteins are there. So when we are going to learn about the classification of the proteins, the classification based on the you are talking about the structure, then these are the fibrous proteins, globular proteins, and intermediate proteins. When classification is based upon the composition, these are simple proteins and the conjugated proteins. Classification based on the functions, structural proteins, enzymes, hormones, pigments, transport proteins, contractile proteins, storage proteins, and toxins are the on the basis of their functions. The proteins are there. So the simplest one was the proteins. Simple proteins, the simplest, made up of amino acid units only, joined by peptide bond. Upon hydrolysis, they yield the mixture of amino acids and nothing else. Examples are albumins, globulins, gluteins, albinoids, and then the legumin, collagen, and histones are the simple proteins. The conjugated proteins composed of simple proteins combined with a non-protein substance. The non-proteinous substance is called the prosthetic group or the cofactor. Nucleoproteins, glycoproteins, phosphoproteins, hemoglobin, then the DNA and the RNA, including the nucleoproteins. These are the combination of these are the conjugated proteins which are related with the nucleoproteins, nucleic acids of the proteins. The glycoproteins is when the glucose or the glycogens are the carbohydrates are going to be combined with the proteins. When the phosphorus is going to be combined with the protein, it is called the phosphoproteins. So these are the second type of the proteins, the conjugated proteins. Then the derived proteins, not only occurring proteins, obtained from the simple proteins by the action of enzymes and chemical agents, result from hydrolysis of the proteins. So examples are peptones, peptides, proteases. These are the derived proteins. Along with that, the metaproteins, coagulated proteins, peptones, and oligoproteins are also examples of the derived proteins. So they are produced by the partial digestion of simple or conjugated proteins. These are called the derived proteins. So student, today you learned about the carbohydrates, their properties, and afterwards you learned about the proteins, their introduction and their classification. In next lecture, inshallah, we are going to learn about the structure and properties of the proteins. So take care. May Allah be with you. Take care. Allah Hafiz.